Okay. What's up, guys? Patch just dropped. Well, the patch notes just dropped about a little bit less than an hour ago, about 30 minutes ago, ish. You linked to the patch notes? Yeah, I got you. They're not up on the website yet, but they're on the Steam community page, so you can check them out there. But yeah, so all right, let's get right into it. Patch 0.26.1. It just dropped a little bit less than an hour ago, so let's talk about it. Hello friends, Aesop here with another edition of the weekly patch notes. Today's notes don't feature anything crazy special like a skin or a character, but we're making a couple of adjustments for characters as usual. This update will go live from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. PST. The servers will be down for approximately 3 hours. So balance framework changes. Or really more, this is more just a description of some of the balance changes that are going to be coming up in this set of patch notes. The average MMR, so they mentioned we'd like to give you guys a little bit of insight into how we balance using all the data we have. This is a quick rough overview of what we determine to look at and how we look into it. The average MMR gain, so basically long story short, what this says is that they look at MMR, they look at how characters are gaining MMR, if a character is gaining too much MMR or not gaining enough MMR in general, and that's something they maybe need to look at. For example, if a character is too good at ratting for placement and they gain a lot of MMR for that, maybe that's something they need to look into. If a character is able to win games and feels oppressive but isn't quite winning consistently, then maybe that also needs to be looked into. Things like that. Win rate. The goal in the tournament tournament is to be the last survivor. Duh. We always keep an eye on win rate, on the win rate of characters so that they don't become outliers. Average kill or kill rank per game, so they're checking on how often characters get kills and how often they get a certain amount of kills relative to every other character in the game. Also, their pick rate is another thing that they look at. So those are like the main factors that they check out. Also, statistics, they check out the stats of basically the strength of the characters over all ranks together, but they also specifically break them up into a couple different groups. The first group that they look at is lower tier MMR. So basically, they don't want to just balance for the high end or really necessarily the high mid. They also want to see how it's performing at low MMR as well as like mid and high. So they look at them in separate categories. We inspect these segments of lower tier MMRs, ensuring that characters aren't overly weak or oppressive to new players or lower skilled characters. You don't want a character to be sort of like a pub stomper, right? Maybe a character doesn't actually pop off in high LP, but maybe they're too good at beating down new players. That's not really healthy for the game, so this is another thing they look at. Also, they look at the top tier versus the top of the top tier, so top 1000 versus top 100 as well. Other considerations in normal matches. When new characters are added, we carefully inspect their performance on normal matches to ensure the integrity of ranked matches when the new character is enabled, and other indicators for specific weapons and armor. Weapons and armor that are shown to be too strong or too weak, overused, underused, etc. are being adjusted as seen fit. And of course, they also listen to our user feedback. And I know sometimes you guys feel frustrated, like, there's no way. They don't listen to the user feedback. I see a lot of people posting in the feedback channel, getting very frustrated a lot, saying Nimble Neuron doesn't listen. Well, they do, but it's hard to necessarily go ahead with everybody's feedback. You know, like everyone has their own different visions for the game. Things are listened to, but not everything can be implemented necessarily, or else it would just be a big conflicted mess. Anyways. Character changes, let's get right into it. So there's more to it than what I just said, but I don't want to sort of spend too long reading everything here. Long story short, they sort of pay attention to everything when it comes to balancing the game. Character specific changes. Nadine. Towards the end of the game, Nadine relies a bit too heavily on cheese by overlapping a ton of squirrel traps. We're working on a better solution in the next major patch. So squirrel trap W duration is being toned down from 70 to 60 seconds. They said that there's going to be something that they're going to be working on for the next major patch, so I don't want to comment too much on this. I don't know what it is that this is alluding to, but basically they don't want people stacking squirrel traps and having it deal a ton of damage. They don't want people, checking a bush and they get hit by 6 or 7, 10, 20 squirrel traps and it kills them, whatever. This is reasonable. I don't know if this is necessarily going to change a whole lot, but we'll see. Again, we're really gonna wait for this next change that they're talking about for potentially the next patch. Luke changes. His power curve still feels a bit weird. We're adjusting his early / late game spikes. Neat and tidy, the passive. The stacks gained from killing a bat / chicken is being increased from 1 to 2, so you're going to be potentially getting earlier evolution points on his passive. And clean sweep is cute. The debuff / reactivation time is being increased from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. I believe this means you have more time to reactivate it as opposed to like a delay before you can reactivate it. It's more time to reactivate it. So it's just sort of cleaning up that skill, making it feel a little bit better. Also, the first part of the Q, the throw, it's going to be dealing less damage at early ranks, going from 30 down to 15, but at later ranks it's being increased, well, really only at the latest final rank, being increased from 110 up to 115. The attack ratio is completely untouched. So it's just mainly a nerf overall, but mainly aimed at the early game. Dirty work, his E. The skill Q delay is being removed by, or not being removed, but being reduced by 0.1. So going down from 0.23 down to 0.13. The delay after the skill is also being reduced from 0.23 down to 0.13 as well. So hopefully just making E feel a little bit smoother, because honestly it does kind of feel like if you use it as a chasing tool, unless you have the slow, which you should, by the way, the slow is pretty good, you're kind of losing distance on it. It doesn't feel very good. So hopefully this sort of smooths that out a little bit. Lennox, very small, very short change, not small though. The stacking buffs of her Q is going down from 2 to 1. So basically the cooldown reduction inherent to the skill is actually being reduced. And I gotta say, this is a kind of a surprising nerf. I don't personally feel like Lennox was overperforming, but they're making it so she's getting a little bit less cooldown reduction on the Q, but we'll see if this is actually the correct call. I just don't really get why this is happening right now. I don't say this is necessarily a wrong change. I'm just kind of curious why it's happening right now, and there's no compensation somewhere else in her kit to sort of buff it back up. Shukai, his E, the big boy is struggling a bit outside of high tiers. We're adjusting his skills to bring a bit of his strength out in the early game. His E cooldown is being... Okay, so basically at earlier ranks, it's got a shorter cooldown. So sort of to dial back the nerfs that it received in the last few patches. But the thing is, even at the max rank, it is going to be a longer cooldown, going from 9 seconds previously up to 10. So it's hurting the late game just a tiny little bit, but buffing the early game sort of to compensate for it. And since this is sort of a 1 point wonder, in some cases, I know there are some high tier players who are maxing the E. This is going to be felt a lot better when you're using this as sort of a 1 point wonder skill. Cecelia changes. Play with us, her E is now a little bit more tactical to use on your real friends. Basically what this means is that the shield granted to allies is being increased. The ratio is the same, but the shield's being increased by 15 at all ranks, just across the board. Honestly, it's a buff. And before you get too upset about Cecelia getting buffed, because there's a lot of weirdos out there who get really obsessed over the fact that Cecelia gets buffed, there is a nerf later in the patch, so that's going to sort of answer for this a little bit. But yeah, it is a little... This is a fine buff. This is not like, oh, she's suddenly broken now. I don't think that this buff is significantly game-changing. It just makes it feel a little bit better if you do end up shielding yourself or your teammate, because it's pretty insignificant at the moment. Sylvia. We're working on tuning down Sylvia's excessive early game strength and helping her keep up the pace late game. There'll be more to come with her change gears, or R, in the next patch, but for now her base attack power is being toned down from 28 down to 25. Oof, good luck killing those chickens now. Aya, or rather the dog really, Aya, her R is causing a little too much damage too quickly. I fully agree, without much time for enemies to respond. Damage taken in solo mode for sniper rifle is being increased from 97% up to 100%, so she's just taking full damage in sniper now, because she was previously taking a little bit reduced damage. And her R, blank cartridge, is going to be dealing less damage on the ratio, if I'm reading this correctly. So it's a charge up thing. You can either like release it immediately to do some damage, or you can charge it up to deal even more damage. The flat amount is not changing. However, the ratio is going from 70% down to 60% for a minimum charge, and 140% down to 120% for a maximum charge. Isol, his E, the cooldown is being changed. It's being reduced by 1 second, a flat 1 second at all ranks, which is interesting to me because like I sort of one of the most obnoxious things about Isol is his E cooldown, and the fact that they're reducing it even more kind of makes it a little bit more obnoxious. But I guess I'm fine with this. Maybe they felt that Isol was not safe enough, so they wanted to change that a little bit. This is fine. I don't really care. This change is sort of insignificant. It doesn't really rub me the wrong way in any sort of way. Yuki changes. Damage taken in duo mode was originally 100% and it's being increased to 102%. This is a very slight nerf to Yuki, two-handed sword in duos. Very niche, very slight, not that interesting. Honestly, just not that interesting. Zahir changes. Zahir scaling attack power per level is being decreased from 2.8 down to 2.5. I don't know exactly how much this is going to affect Zahir because it's these scaling changes are always hard to interpret on paper, but you're gonna see this be about a 3 attack power difference at rank 10 and a 6 attack power difference at rank 20. Not huge, but it's something. It's something. Kiara. Her Q. Okay, so that way actually has some interesting changes for Kiara. A lot of these changes have been pretty small. We have some interesting changes for Kiara. Kiara, her Hand of Corruption Q, the cooldown is being decreased at later ranks up to a 2-second reduction at rank 5. So it's going from 10, it used to be 10 to 8, now it's 10 to 6. And her E, the chain duration. Now, I need to clarify something. I've seen some people freaking out about this. The chain duration is not the root. The root is not getting buffed. What this says is Kiara's E's chain, like the time it takes before the chain roots you, is being increased. So you have more time to try and break the chain is what this is. Not a whole lot of extra time, but a little bit more time before the chain reactivates and hurts you and damages you and roots you. So from 1.75 up to 2 seconds. Not a huge change, but a slight change. Damage dealt in squad modes. For Rapier in squads, which is her only weapon type at the moment, is being decreased from 97% down to 93%. Cathy changes. Ooh, we got a lot. Okay, hold on. We have a lot of Cathy changes to go through. So Cathy came out. She was a little bit powerful. I think a lot of people would say she's pretty powerful, and I'm glad that I didn't do a tier list yet because she's pretty much for sure going to change after this, or maybe not. Honestly, these changes could be pretty interesting. I think the knee-jerk reaction is that they're a nerf, but let's get right into them. You can now play Cathy in ranked. Under the knife, her passive, the severe wound debuff duration is going down from 6 to 5 seconds, so that's a nerf, and the damage is being decreased from 6% max HP damage with a 120 ratio down to 5% max HP damage with a 100% ratio, so that's a pretty big nerf to the passive. Her Q, double bypass. The flat damage is being reduced by 10 damage at all ranks. Additionally, the ratio is being reduced by 10%, going from 70% attack power down to 60% attack power. So that's a pretty... it's not a huge damage nerf, but it's a damage nerf to all ranks of her Q. And keep in mind, her Q is her main damage source in the early to mid game. Also, keep in mind that the skill activation speed, which is different depending on how close you are to your enemy, is being changed. Nearby enemies, the skill activation speed for nearby enemies is going down from 0.2 to 0.13, so it'll come out a little bit faster. Also for faraway enemies, I can't tell if this is saying that it's being changed at all, but it's saying that the dash is going from 0.13 down to 0.03 seconds, but the dash time is 0.1 seconds. I don't know if you add that to this and it's back to 0.13. I'm unsure, but this is a sort of a compensation, making it a little bit smoother even though it's dealing less damage. Cooldown reduction when enemies are severely wounded is being changed from 80% at all ranks to 40, 50, 60, 70, all the way up to 80 at max rank. Keep in mind, you should be maxing her Q first anyway, so you're not going to really be noticing this change after the first like 8 levels or so. Maybe I don't know when you hit your first like level 5 skill, but you won't be noticing this in the mid game. You're really mostly noticing this for the early game, which is honestly where this needed to be changed. So I like this change a lot. I'm gonna drink some water real quick. Okay, and also one more thing, the additional damage when in melee range, remember, it did 50% more damage when you were close to your target. That's being scaled down to 30% instead. So overall, pretty significant nerfs for the Q from start to finish. I can't say how many times I saw Cathy with a full weapon at like minute 20 day 1. Yeah, she finishes her weapon really fast, and that is probably the biggest issue with her, is that she snowballs incredibly fast because she gets her weapon online so quickly. Cathy needs to be overly nerfed like Lennox. I don't know if she needs overly nerfed, but we're still getting through it. We'll get through it, then we can talk more about Cathy. Amputation, her W, the skill activation speed is being reduced quite a bit from 0.33 down to 0.26. This is actually very, I love this buff, and it actually helps her chase a ton. Her W was a good chasing tool because it slowed people, it stopped them from using movement skills, and it could activate your passive, it could give you a lot of movement speed. It was nice, but the thing was is that the time it took for you to use it, you probably didn't actually gain that much distance on your chase target. So this sort of remedies that a little bit. It comes out a little bit faster, and it doesn't have quite as much self-stun to do with it. The projectile speed for Suture, her E, is being increased from 20 meters per second up to 27.78 meters per second. The delay when using a skill, the what? Delay? Oh, the delay when using the skill, knockback delay was 0.2 to 0.1, and the delay afterwards is from 0.26 to 0.13. So basically, this had a similar issue with a W where you would basically self-stun yourself when using it. I think they're scaling back on that with this change, so it will have less delay for you. That being said, the initial projectile speed will no longer be blocked by walls, which is another huge buff to her E. Her E was pretty... We were talking about this earlier. I was talking about this with some friends earlier. Her E was simultaneously the best and worst skill in her kit. When it popped off, this is so absolutely insanely strong when you actually get to land the stun. That being said, it got eaten by walls like crazy, it was incredibly inconsistent, and in general, it was never useful unless you got the stun, because you would basically self-stun yourself, so it didn't help with chasing. All it really did was extend a bleed. It wasn't great. But this is fixing a lot of those issues. It's no longer going to get eaten by walls. You can shoot it through a wall to hit somebody, and then they can then get hit into another wall. Like, this is huge. This is a big change, and this is really nice for her E. The damage upon impact is being reduced though from by 20 damage at all ranks. This is on the second impact, and the attack power ratio is being decreased by 10% as well. So essentially, so far, it's been nothing but quality of life buffs with damage nerfs to compensate, essentially, which I like. I like those changes. Makes her feel better to play and reduces some of her sort of problematic damage. I like that. Her R is receiving a lot of changes as well. The damage on the R is being reduced. Okay, let me read this so I know exactly what I'm saying. So the early damage, basically the way the R worked is that the lower the HP of your target, the more damage it would deal. It had an execute property to it, and it would cap that damage, I believe, at 25% remaining max HP. So what is being changed is that execute higher end of damage is being reduced. Previously it was 300, 500, 700. It's being reduced to 240, 400, 560. The ratio is also being toned down from 150% down to 120%. But here's some things to compensate. Keep in mind, the base damage is intact. Nothing changed. And also, you'll cap out on that damage a little bit earlier. So you can R them earlier to get, more damage out. Essentially, you don't have to wait till they're at 25% HP remaining to get the full damage. You can do it a little bit earlier, which makes it feel a little bit better. That being said, though, the damage is just reduced in general for that execute property. The recovery, this is the heal associated with the R. The recovery is being reduced, but it kind of depends. It's a little bit context driven. So the flat amount is staying the same no matter what. Doesn't matter your HP, the flat amount is staying the same. However, the ratio is being reduced from 60% at base amount to 40% at base amount. And with your ideal scenario, it's being reduced from 90% down to 60%. So overall, we're seeing ratio nerfs to the healing, but we're seeing ratio nerfs and flat nerfs to the top end of the damage. If this is confusing, don't worry about it. This is just a nerf overall. That's all I need to sort of drive home. This is a nerf overall and changing some of the problematic issues with it. Also, keep in mind, the bonus recovery at HP amount is being drastically reduced. So you're not going to be getting that extra 50% heal at 40% HP. You're only going to get it when you're below 20% HP. So it's a lot riskier to get that full healing off. It's going to be a lot harder to get that full healing off. Keep that in mind. That is actually a significant nerf as well. The cooldown is also being changed in a pretty positive way, I'd say. The initial cooldown being a little bit shorter. Rank 1, 150 down to 120. But at rank 3, it's being increased from 90 up to 100. Whew, we're not done with Cathy yet. Not quite yet. Dagger. This is basically Cathy specific. When she's using a dagger, which is her only weapon type, the damage dealt in dual mode is being decreased from 100% down to 98%, and the damage dealt in squad is being reduced from 100% down to 96%. Okay, we made it through the Cathy changes. Overall, they're reducing her damage and buffing the quality of life on her skills. Her W comes out faster, her E can go through walls, it won't get eaten by walls, and it is faster and gives less delay. However, damage across the board being reduced slightly. I like these changes, I really do. I actually really like these changes because her damage did feel a little bit problematic, but she also had a little bit of clunkiness in her kit, which has been addressed, so I'm a big fan. AK Scorch says, Cathy hasn't been an overwhelming release, but by far the most frustrating one to experience yet. Yeah, I don't think she's all that frustrating, honestly. I think she can be in the right circumstances, but honestly, there's been releases that have been way more frustrating than Cathy for me. Like Shoichi comes to mind, Kiara comes to mind. These are characters that were way more broken when they came out. Isol, oh my god. Most of you guys weren't around for Isol release, but let me tell you, that character was actually nuts broken on release. Cathy was just a little, she was just strong. She wasn't completely broken on release. So these changes, I think they're appropriate. They're sort of toning down the problematic issues while buffing some quality of life stuff to make her just feel better. I like these changes, we'll see how they play out. Anyways, Fiora. Fiora is a bit too much of an early game threat if she hits 6 quickly. Guard, her R is going to be dealing reduced damage at rank 1, going from 30 down to 25. At rank 2, it's exactly the same at 35, and at rank 3, it's being increased actually from 40 up to 45. That's just the base damage. However, there are some ratio changes. Her ratio changes are being buffed at all ranks actually, going from 6 to 18% instead of the previous 5. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Scratch all of that. All of that. I just read that wrong. Hold on. The ratios are getting nerfed at all ranks. Attack power ratio going from 6 to 18% previously is going down to 5 to 15% instead. They're not changing the scaling? What? Hold on. I'm receiving word that this is not happening. What? Oh, so it's not being changed. Okay. It was a mistake in the patch notes. Okay. Guys, they made a mistake in the patch notes. Ignore this part. They're not changing the scaling, but they are changing the flat amount. Okay. The flat amount is correct, but the scaling is not being touched. Okay, sure. This change isn't that interesting. Doesn't matter. SP cost is scaling instead of flat. Hedgen changes. There is a large gap in results between veteran Hedgen players and people picking her up for the first time. We're trying to fix that a bit. Shuriken. Damage dealt in solo mode is being decreased from 112% down to 108%, and damage taken in solo mode is being increased from 90% up to 94%. So basically Shuriken may have been overtuned a little bit, so they're going to be shifting that back towards that 100% mark on both damage dealt and damage taken. So she's dealing less damage with Shuriken than she was previously, and she's taking a little bit more damage too. Her ultimate, or sorry, take that back. Her passive, 3 calamities. The time until you can be feared again is being increased from 8 seconds up to 9 seconds. I personally like this change a lot. I don't like the fact that Hedgen can just chain CC. She can just like kite you forever. She can really lock down people for a long time repeatedly. Didn't like that. This is sort of remedying that a little bit, going from 8 seconds up to 9 seconds between chances of you getting feared. 5 Omens, her ultimate. The initial damage is being buffed. The ratio going from 70% up to 85%. However, the charms themselves, the things that orbit around Hedgen, the ratio is going to be getting reduced from 50% down to 40%. The way I see this is if you hit... Okay, hold on. So basically the initial burst is going to be dealing a little bit more damage, but it's going to be decreasing the amount of damage you deal if you are able to land multiple of the charms afterwards. So this is a combination of a buff and a nerf. It's a buff for newer players because if you just like E in and ult and you get like that initial burst, but you don't actually get to land any of your omens because you're having trouble, you know, spacing that, you're going to be still dealing a little bit more damage than you were before. But for veteran players who could chain all the omens together, this is a damage nerf overall, but not by much. I wouldn't read too much into this. It's not that huge of a change. Weapon changes. Pistol. The attack speed per mastery is being increased for pistols by 3%, or sorry, from 3% up to 3.3. Magnum Boa ammo count going up from 6 to 7. This is just kind of nice. Honestly, like Magnum Boa, dude, 6 ammo felt so bad. I'm okay with this. Glove changes. 1-inch punch defense decrease. Divine Fist is a little bit slower. Brazil Gauntlet also a little bit slower. Bloodwing Knuckles less max HP, going from 250 down to 210. I love this change. I hate Bloodwing Knuckles as a weapon. It's so obnoxious, so I'm okay with this change. White Claw Punch is getting a buff, going from 22% crit chance up to 25%, because honestly, after nerfing glove skill can't crit anymore. That was a change that came in the last major patch. So what they're trying to do is maybe buff White Claw Punch, because maybe people didn't want to build crit as much on these glove users because they nerfed that functionality. I'm not complaining about this this buff quite yet, but we've seen a world where White Claw Punch was at 25 crit chance and it was honestly really strong. So we'll see how this ends up playing out. This might be something that you see built a lot more in the future as sort of an early game rush, because you can finish this thing pretty fast. Dagger changes. Cloak and Dagger. The movement speed at rank 1 is being reduced by 5%. Also, Karnwennen. The attack power is being reduced by 3, and the cooldown reduction being reduced by 2%. Vibroblade is also getting its attack power reduced from 57 down to 55. These changes are obviously to target Cathy a little bit more. I'm still not really complaining about these changes. I am surprised that Fragarack was not touched though. Fragarack is really, once Cathy gets Fragarack, that's where she felt really problematic. Fragarack in general, I feel, is just kind of overtuned, so I would like to maybe see Fragarack. If Fragarack's overperforming, maybe we hit Fragarack at some point. But overall, I think these changes are fine. Axe changes. Berserk. The D skill. The cooldown is being reduced from 60 seconds down to 50 seconds, and the duration is also being increased from 5 seconds up to 6 at rank 1 and 7 seconds up to 8 at rank 2. Just quality of life buffs for axe skill in general, which felt a little underwhelming, so I'm okay with this. I'm a fan. Assault rifle changes. Gatling gun is getting 6 more ammo, so hopefully that makes activating weapon skill feel a little bit better, or just make the weapon feel better in general, because it's a little bit underperforming at the moment. Rapier changes. Enad per mastery level is being increased from 4% up to 4.2%, and attack speed is also being increased from 2.7% up to 2.9%. Mistleton, also a little bit more attack power, going from 30 up to 33. Just rapier buffs in general across the board. Kind of surprising, because I honestly felt like rapier was performing fairly well. On Fiora, rapier is kind of the most popular way to play her at the moment. Obviously, Kiara can only play with rapier, so it's a little bit interesting. Yeah, little interesting. We'll see how that plays out. I don't think these changes are that significant, so I'm not like, you know, raising my pitchforks. But it's interesting. We'll see how this plays out. Shuriken, the attack speed per mastery level is being increased from 1.8% up to 2.0%. Caltrops. Now this is what I was talking about when I was saying, yeah, Cecelia got a little bit of a buff earlier. here is the compensation nerf. Caltrops, the damage is being decreased, and this needed to happen. It was at 110/180, it's being toned down to 80/160. So it's losing 30 damage at rank 1 and 20 damage at rank 2. This is a significant nerf. I don't think it's going to invalidate it as a weapon skill, as 80 is still really high and so is 160, but it's something. Honestly, Caltrops needed to get toned down, so I'm happy to see it finally happening. This was, okay, my biggest issue with a lot of the current powerful Shuriken characters is not because Shuriken is good, it's because Caltrops is busted. Like, Caltrops was legitimately so overtuned, so this is something that has been needing to happen for a long time. Also, the slow is being decreased at rank 1, going from 30 down to 20, but the rank 2 slow is intact at 40%. Pedal Torrent recharge, the recharge rate is going up, you could say, from 80 seconds to 70 seconds per recharge, so it will recharge slightly faster. Mystic Jade Charm is going from 10 charges up to 12. Love this change. Death Rune from 10 to 15. I love changing this. Honestly, I've been playing a lot of Mystic Jade Charm lately, and I've been able to kind of function just fine with just 10 charges. That being said, it's a quality of life change. Please, for the love of God, just give them charges. It doesn't matter. People aren't. If Mystic Jade Charm had 50 charges today, I don't think you'd really notice it. I really don't think you would. It doesn't change things that much. So anyways, this is a change. I like it. Sniper. Skill amplification per mastery level going down from 2.3% down to 2.0%. Sniper, the D skill, the damage attack power ratio is being decreased from 250/300% down to 220/280. Kind of a fan, honestly. I felt like Sniper, like Amp Sniper, was kind of, I'm not gonna say overperforming, but it was just obnoxious in a not healthy way. And this is gonna fix that a little bit. I'm okay with this. This isn't gonna gut it. It's just gonna be a little bit less problematic. Tonfa changes. Tactile Tonfa, defense buff. Mysok, defense buff. Plasma Tonfa, defense buff. Not huge defense buffs, but they're getting defense buffs. Back on Caltrops, AK Square says Cecelia Caltrops, pull them in with E equals 1 fight. Yeah. Like, Caltrops was what was making Cecelia so incredibly problematic. She could just rely on that for her damage and just burst you instantly. It's a character that shouldn't have insane burst, but more sustained fights, and my god, it was just insane burst. It was just really bad. Bad as in, like, too good. Inukuma says, I had Caltrops dropped on me and couldn't really fight back the other day. Yeah, it was really oppressive. It really was. Throw changes. Smokescreen, the D. The cast time is being reduced from 0.29 to 0.15. I love this change because, holy cow, Smokescreen was... It's not terrible, but it's so much worse than Caltrops. And the thing that was so frustrating about Smokescreen as someone who has used Smokescreen a ton was the fact that the time it took for you to throw it out, you could have just done something else that was more valuable with your time. It seriously had such a long cast animation, so this is helping that a lot. I'm a big fan of this. Yeah, I'm honestly just a big fan of this. Incendiary Bomb. The attack speed is being increased from 50 up to 60%, and Smoke Bomb, the max charges is going up from 20 up to 24%. Valmar says it was competing with Heart W for the worst button in the game, so that's gotta be nice. Yeah, it felt really bad. I've seen a lot of people complain about Smokescreen. It was so underwhelming. Like, you could just A-click in it, you could just dash in or out of it, like, or dash through it, you know, or dash out of it. Like, it was just such an underwhelming button. So I'm glad it's gonna actually just come out and be a little bit less taxing on your time as the thrower. Anyways, I love these. I don't know if I love the Incendiary Bomb change. Incendiary Bomb is sort of unseen outside of Adriana, so it is a little bit of a buff to Adriana, but we'll see if it gets used on other people as well. It fucks melees. It really didn't. Like, I've never seen a good player actually get outplayed by Smokescreen. Like, it's... If I'm in the Smokescreen and you're also in the Smokescreen, you can just see me. Like, you actually just see me. If I'm outside of the Smokescreen and you're in it, The cast time is long, so by the time I actually throw it where it needs to be, there's a good chance you're going to be running past it, around it, or something. It just wasn't that powerful. Like, there was so much you could do to outplay it, and at the end of the day, it did no damage. It did nothing really impactful that wouldn't just be better off if you had Caltrops. Like, Caltrops was just it, but better in almost every single possible situation. The slow is so insignificant. It's like 15% or something. It's like really, really slow. Seriously, Smokescreen was not good. But anyways, Smoke Bomb, max charges 20 up to 24. This is a nice change. Spear changes. Genshin Silver Gun. Wait, melee players complaining? I'm shocked. Anyways, Genshin Silver Gun. The movement speed is being decreased from 0.15 down to 0.12. A little bit less movement speed on Genshin Silver Gun, which honestly didn't seem that problematic for me at the moment. Like, do you guys think Genshin Silver Gun kind of needed a nerf right now? Like, movement speed weapons are powerful. They've been powerful traditionally. Like, keep in mind, what is it, the mithril gloves or whatever they're called? Those things are mithril gated and they're super, super strong. You've got weapons like Joyous that just got a fat nerf, but it was also up to 0.3 movement speed recently. And Genshin Silver Gun has been nerfed in its movement speed before, but I'm surprised to see it get nerfed again right now. But I guess they thought maybe it was doing too well. So this is a change that probably needed to happen based on their stats. Spear of Longinus. Less attack power, going from 135 down to 130. But Blazing Lance is actually getting a buff from 110 up to 115. Bow changes. Ancient Bolt. The attack power is being increased from 55 up to 58. Honestly, like, Ancient Bolt, I'm not saying Ancient Bolt's in great shape right now, so I'm not objecting to this buff, but Ancient Bolt, when it's strong, is pretty scary, so I'd be interested in seeing if Ancient Bolt actually showed up after this. Let's see some armor changes. Handblock, the cooldown reduction, this is the thing that builds into either Queen of Hearts or Cobra Agent uniform. It's sort of a standby piece. The cooldown reduction is being increased from 8% up to 10%. It was originally nerfed at one point from 15% down to 8%, so it's getting a little bit of that back. Rocker's Jacket, the defense is being buffed from 11 up to 14, because Rocker's Jacket also got a string of nerfs recently that kind of made it fall out of favor, so this is trying to bring that back a little bit. Mithril Armor flat skill damage reduction is being increased from 10 to 13. This is pretty significant, guys. 13 flat skill damage reduction is actually quite a lot. I would not be surprised if we saw a lot more Mithril Armor coming out in general. Bazoo Band, crit damage reduction. It's just gaining crit damage reduction. What? Did it always have that? Did Swordstopper have that? I don't think so. Well, I'm curious. Am I crazy? Did hold on, I have to check in game. Give me a second, guys. I need to know. I don't want to spit. Okay, so Swordstopper had 10% crit damage reduction. They added that recently, didn't they? That was like a few patches ago, right? Because that wasn't there always, like, and forever. But let's see. Bazoo Band had none. Okay, so basically they're trying to make Bazoo Band transition into Swordstopper a little bit better. So that's what that is. Bazoo Band going from 0% crit damage reduction up to 6%, which will eventually turn into 10% when you finish the Swordstopper. Swordstopper is losing 6 defense, going from 36 down to 30. Buccaneer Doubloon, the new accessory that just got added in the Cathy patch, is getting a slight buff of going from 8% crit chance up to 12%, and a few more slight changes before the end of the patch. Telephoto camera stacks going from 5 to 6. So if you make 2 stacks of or 2 crafts of cameras, you no longer have that awkward like 5-in-1 split. It can all just be on one stack. Boar changes. You're getting a little bit more reward for killing the piggies. The initial HP is being increased from 792 to 940 max HP with way less defense, going from 38 down to 16, and the experience granted is being increased significantly from 198 up to 242. And there's a few bug fixes, including everyone's favorite cufflink when the Yuki is dead bug fix, as well as a few other things like Cathy freezing people, things like that. That is actually going to cover it for the entire patch. What did you guys think? I'm curious what you thought. I think the biggest thing that we have to talk about here is Cathy. I've already voiced sort of my opinions on this. I am a big fan of the Caltrops nerf in general. I'm a big fan of the Cathy changes in general. I'm a big fan of all this transparency. They're really trying to tell us like a lot of the reasons why they're making the changes that they're making. So I think this patch is pretty good in general. there's nothing that really stands out to me as like, I'm upset, I'm gonna open up Gen Chat and argue with everybody, like, oh, I'm gonna go post in the feedback section. All this seems fine. Nothing here is like egregiously overtuning or undertuning something that needs to be changed in some ridiculous way. So let me know what you guys think. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this patch notes discussion. So yeah, thank you guys all for watching. The Cathy nerfs are amazing, says Bronkari. I'm just happy that Cathy is getting less damage overall. She's kind of way too oppressive on the early game, says Mr. Reborn. Yeah, I agree. I think her early game damage was too oppressive. I actually fully agree with that. I think the actual changes they made were pretty solid outside of the small cis nerfs. Oh no, I like the cis nerfs. I think they're fine, because they didn't nerf all of cis. All they nerfed was Caltrops, and Caltrops was broken, so I'm okay with that. Like, they made her, she got a little bit bigger shield. It's not huge, but it's, you know, it's something. And smokescreen doesn't suck ass anymore, hopefully. So maybe that'll actually feel good to use. So yeah, Sis is a better option for throw with better smoke. Yeah. Like throw's gonna feel a lot better right now. And I'm not saying throw's weak. But man, like, this skill just felt absolutely fucking awful to use. Excuse my language. It just felt awful. And honestly, its strength was way overstated when Caltrops existed. Caltrops was just smokescreen, but it did damage. And actually had an impact on a fight. Whereas smokescreen just really didn't. Smoke was kind of useful in team modes, and that's really about it. In solos, it might as well have just not existed. Compared to Caltrops. It was too easy to read with the wind-up. Yeah, the wind-up was just brutal. I think the people who are poo-pooing this change didn't play a lot of throw. Like, the wind-up, man. Ow, that wind-up was so long. Like, normally the time it took for you to throw that thing down just gave any character the chance to catch up to you. Like, it was just awful. And the slow is not significant. What'd you miss? We were doing patch notes discussion. Just a brief patch notes discussion, and unfortunately, that's gonna be it. I'm gonna be turning off the stream right there.